Thanks again for joining us. Let's tell you a little bit about the Canary Islands. But first of all, a few words about Wheel and Anchor. And this is aimed at those of you who have not attended one of our webinars before or not attended one of our trips before. So if you are that, you can just put this next minute or so on mute or on pause, if you will, while I explain for our new members what we are all about. So we are a community of travelers from all across Canada. That was an idea that I came up with about 5 years, coming up 6 years ago, spurring out of many, many years of organizing trips for Canadians to destinations all over the world. And the bottom line is that what I found is that when you get a group of like-minded people together, and you sort of foster the kind of kinship that you sometimes get when you do organized travel with groups. But we really put a lot of emphasis on that into our trips, that, people get to know each other. We do activities together. And that's a bit of the philosophy behind Wheel and Anchor is that we're really out to create, and we have created a community of travelers from all across the country. And so the way that we organize our trips is very much oriented around this idea of community. And so, our trips are, organized. So, you're traveling with a small group of people or a medium-sized group of people, depending on the destination and the mode of travel and so on. But the way that our trips are organized, first of all, we go to places that you just don't often find in a lot of in most companies' agendas. Not to mention that they're curated in a way because they're curated all by myself. So I mean, I pick out the places that we're going to stay, the places that we're going to eat, and who we're going to work with based on my own experiences. And in this case, in the Canary Islands, I literally just went there a month ago in order to sort of spec out this whole trip. And so again, our goal is that our members become well-traveled so that when you visit a place, you can say, yeah, you're connected to it. You feel a little bit a part of it, as opposed to you have to look back at the brochure to find out where it was that you went. We want you to have every experience where the experience itself resonates with you such that it's memorable. So that's really what Wheel and Anchor, what our philosophy is all about. In order to pull this all off, I have an amazing team of people. So by way of introduction, my name is Gordon. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor. And again, I have a wonderful group of people that helps me do the operational side, the coordination of all these trips, all the reservations, all the details, the myriad of planning that we have. And then the most important person for you, our members, is Paula, who is our lead trip specialist and the one that you're most likely going to speak to on the phone when you go to book a trip and get more information and get all your questions answered to the extent that we can't answer them in the information that we provide. And Paula and I are supported by, as I say, a wonderful group of people that work actually all over the map. Who are the foundation of Wheel and Anchor. So today it's all about sharing with you this idea of our newest LiveAway program, why you might consider coming with us to the Canary Islands. I'm going to take you around, show you a few photos, and explain what makes these islands a little bit different and why you may want to head there next January. So let me tell you, first of all, a little bit about the LiveAway concept. Again, this is predominantly aimed at those of you who've not participated in one of our trips or one of our webinars. And so you're like, what is this LiveAway idea anyway? Well, there's a couple of key points to a LiveAway. First of all, it's a longer stay holiday. So our LiveAways are generally 2 weeks in duration, and they're done in a modular fashion so that they align up with other LiveAway programs. The idea being that when you go on a LiveAway, and they generally happen between January and April, although we're looking at expanding that season in future, you could combine LiveAways in the same region in order to spend a prolonged period of time away. We want to give you the opportunity to do something in our winter and early spring months when the weather at home is, well, we all know what the weather at home is like in January until April, and see some of the world and places that you might not otherwise consider going at this time of the year. Again, in a longer term format. So 2-week modules. In the case here of the Canary Islands, we decided actually to divide that 2 weeks up into 2 islands, so 2 times 1 week. And this trip happens immediately before our Madeira live-away, which starts in February. So one could, for example, combine a live-away here in the Canary Islands with Madeira. You could also potentially combine Madeira with Cyprus or with Malta, or there's various other combinations possible. So you look at all of the different programs that we have and find out which programs you could combine together in order to spend a longer period of time away from the nasty Canadian winter. A couple other things about our live-away programs is that it's designed to be sort of a hybrid between a small group experience and also independent travel, in that we don't prescribe the sightseeing excursion. So rather, we give you a program. It includes accommodation. It includes breakfast in most cases. Actually, in one of the hotels here on this program in La Palma, it's going to be breakfast and dinner. It's going to be half board. And it includes an activity credit that you can then select the excursions that you wish. And we try to do it so that, upwards of, half of the excursions are covered by that activity credit. Sometimes it's a bit less, depending on the cost of the excursions, and sometimes it's a bit more. The point being that you can then create your own experience in terms of how much you want to do. Some people come on our live-away programs, honestly, just to sort of hang out and relax in the mild weather of a place like the Canary Islands. Some people come because they want a true sightseeing tour and they want to do as many activities as possible. And so they sign up for every single trip. So no matter what, if you are the person that would rather do as little as possible, you don't even have to use the whole activity credit, because you can then, whatever's left over, will refund you after the trip is over. So if you decide, nah, I just kind of want to do 1 or 2 things and sort of do stuff on my own or relax around the pool, that's perfectly fine. Alternatively, and I know we have members like that who are like, no, I want to be busy every single day, in which case you'd select the excursions that appeal to you, and then whatever the additional cost of those additional excursions is, it gets tacked on. So you get to set the pace. And as I say, you can do things on your own, but you have the benefit of that community feeling with the group. So we have right away on the first within the first 24 hours after you arrive, we'll have an icebreaker, a cocktail party, a get-together, meet your fellow members, hang out for a bit. We have a Telegram group. That's our messaging app that we use in order to sort of say, hey, who's doing this and who's doing that? And we encourage you to sort of meet up with other people and explore on your own, because for me, that's important as well, that it's not just about everything being organized for you. It's about going off and venturing on your own. And you can do that in the Canary Islands just as well as you can do as if you were traveling around other parts of Europe. So that's what the concept of a live-away is all about. Now, let's take a moment and do a little bit of a geography lesson here and look at the map of the Canary Islands. So I'm going to take a few minutes here to explain about this. If you didn't already know, the Canary Islands is a volcanic archipelago which is situated here off the coast of Africa. So it's part of Spain, although it's an autonomous region of Spain, Spain being up here. Madeira, that many of you will know because maybe you've been on our Madeira live-away or you participated in the webinar. Madeira is up here, further to the north, so about 700 kilometers or so to the south, and actually about 300 kilometers off the coast of Africa, you'll find this group of islands called the Canary Islands. There are 7 of them in total, 7 principal islands. 4 of them are large. Those include Tenerife and Gran Canaria. Those are the 2 largest and most populous islands. These are these 2 here. Sorry, this map is a little bit small. And then you have Fuerteventura and Lanzarote are the other 2 large islands. You got 4 bigger islands, and then you have 3 small islands. One of them being La Palma, which is here. You also have La Gomera and El Hierro. And so we couldn't really feasibly do all 7 islands. And so father, we chose two. How did I choose these two islands? Well, let me tell you. Um, uh, I chose them a little bit by process of elimination. The islands of Fuerteventura and Lanzarote over here are basically beach destinations. There are some beautiful sights on those islands. There's no question about it. But the majority of people from Europe head there as a beach destination. They go to resort, they check in, they don't leave. They do that on Tenerife as well as on Gran Canaria. But I chose Tenerife and La Palma specifically because of the hybrid of things that there are able to do, because of the beautiful scenery, but also the cultural depth that you can experience on these two islands. I was considering some of the other islands. We may do other islands in the future. We're going to sort of see how this plays out. But I think that the choice of Tenerife, which is the most populous island of the Canary Islands, and La Palma, which is one of the quiet and arguably one of the prettiest. If you went and Googled which is the most beautiful Canary Island, it'll probably come up with La Palma. And so we decided to combine those two. And so, first of all, talking about La Palma, you may have heard about it before because, of course, a huge volcano went off there. And you think, oh my God, is it safe to go on an island where a volcano went off? Well, you could ask the same question about Iceland or about Hawaii or about, islands in Indonesia. I mean, volcanoes go off all the time. And when we say all the time, geologically speaking, they go off all the time in a time span of millions of years. But of course, the most, I suppose, devastating, if I can use a negative word, or the biggest volcano that's gone off on the European or in Europe in the last century has been here on La Palma. And so you think, oh, is that, sort of a safe place to go? It was interesting because I went to La Palma, as I say, last month, thinking, oh, what is this island going to look like? A volcano went off there. And what's very interesting is that the volcano, the area that the volcano affected actually is only about this sort of rectangular part here on the island. A big part of the island, and it was a very fertile area that was literally flattened, and a couple of thousand people lost their homes and businesses and all the rest of it. But interestingly, on the other side of the Cordillera, on the other side of the mountain range here in Santa Cruz, other than the fact that when the volcano initially went off, there was ash going into the air and there was, huge clouds of smoke and all the rest of this kind of thing, but they otherwise didn't really know what was going on. The volcano went off, erupted for a period of approaching 3 months, where lava was coming out. An entire mountain was actually formed out of here. And, obviously this disrupted air travel and all the rest of it. But a life returned on the island pretty quickly. And so nowadays, when you travel there, and of course we'll go and visit that, and you drive across the island, across the mountains, you immediately see this huge swath of the island that was like literally buried in lava. And it's an amazing thing to see and visit. But life on La Palma has otherwise completely returned to normal. And I don't say that lightly because, a lot of people were deeply, deeply affected by this volcano. And one of the impacts, if you will, is that La Palma is actually now was kind of a sleepier island. Insiders knew it as being this beautiful, beautiful island. But now that the volcano went off, it's like become one of the most popular places to go because everybody wants to go and see the island where the volcano went off. And so, that has its own allure. The first half of our trip will be to La Palma. We're going to be staying down here in this village of Las Cancajos, which is just outside of the capital city of Santa Cruz de La Palma. And from here, we can reach easily within a day all parts of the island on the different excursions that I'll talk to you about in a second. The second half of our live-away is going to be here on the island of Tenerife. Now, these maps are not to scale. In fact, it should say that here, not to scale. So La Palma is a fraction of the size of Tenerife. So if I was to compare it, it would be like if you sliced off this part of Tenerife here, sort of this corner, that would be roughly the size of La Palma. So it's much, much smaller. We're going to travel in between by ferry from Santa Cruz directly to Tenerife, specifically down to Los Cristianos, which is on the south coast of the island here. And Tenerife is, as I say, is the largest island, or I think it's the second largest island in the archipelago. And it is also the most populous island, and it is arguably the most touristy island. Now, most of the tourists that come to Tenerife will be heading to resorts on this south part of the island down here. Places called Playa Las Americas, Los Cristianos, Los Gigantes. There's a number of resorts down here. I went and visited. It's a bit of a concrete jungle, and I'm like, that's not really the vibe that we are looking for. But it is also the warmest part of the island if you compare sort of south to north. Kind of makes sense, if you will. We, however, are going to be staying in the original touristic capital, if you will, called Puerto de la Cruz, which is an absolutely charming city here on the north coast that I found, with access to some beautiful coastline east and west. Not to mention that you can be in the national park of Teide, which is where this huge volcano is, in the center of the island. The capital city here is Santa Cruz de Tenerife. We'll make a visit there while we're on the island, as well as to the UNESCO designated city of La Laguna that you see over here. So Puerto de la Cruz, a great spot to be, and again, gives us access to different parts of the island for the different excursions that we're going to be doing. So there's the geography lesson, if you will. So let's go into a little bit more depth about part one, which is La Palma, where we're going to be going from the 18th to the 25th. There are actually not a tremendous number of accommodation of hotels on the island, but I did manage to find this lovely spot called Taburiente Playa, which is located here on the coast with direct access to a black sand beach. The capital city, Santa Cruz, is over here in the background. It's actually about 5 kilometers away, and there's a shuttle bus from the hotel that takes you in on a regular basis into the city center. So between this little village around the Taburiente Playa and Santa Cruz, there's lots to do to just sort of relax. As you can see, multiple pools in this property. There's access to the beach. You think, oh, can I go to the beach in January? Well, yes, you can, because the Atlantic Ocean around here at this time of the year has a pretty steady temperature, much like it does in Madeira. The temperature is typically around 17, 18, as high as 20 degrees in January. So it's not tropical warm, but we don't, this LiveAway program is in our series of what we call temperate client liveaways, as opposed to our tropical series in Thailand and in Indonesia. So the weather typically in January is usually very nice. You might get the odd day of rain here. In fact, the locals would pray for rain because they generally don't get tons of rain in the Canary Islands. And this hotel here has some lovely rooms. We offer both standard rooms, which have views up to the mountains, we also have the option to upgrade to sea view rooms, and they also have larger rooms called Grand Superior, which are as big as about, I think, 500 square feet with an extra sort of a living area in the hotel. As I mentioned as well, this hotel we're actually offering with half board. We don't normally do that, but the hotel gave us a great offer that we couldn't refuse. So on this trip, you're going to be particularly well fed because, of course, on most of our excursions, as you know, we offer lunches. So you'll have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So there's no way that you could possibly go away hungry from this experience. There's a number of different things to do on the island of La Palma. And of course, our excursions cover in basically most of the corners of the island, starting with the northeastern escapade, as we call it. This is going to take us up to the Laurel Forest. The mountains on the island go up to about 2,500 meters above sea level. And what you'll find up in the higher elevations is an incredible laurel forest, which is part of the World Biosphere Reserve that La Palma is quite famous for. So we're going to visit around this area. We're also going to discover a rum factory, and we're going to take a look at some of the charming little towns that you can see in some of the vistas along the very rugged coastline of La Palma. We're also going to head up to the highest point, a place called La Roque de los Muchachos, which is the Rock of the Boys, if you will, up at, as I say, at just over 2,400 meters above sea level. Incredible views looking out over the island. We're going to explore some of the vineyards here. So again, you probably will have never tried a wine before from the Canary Islands. Lots of wine is produced in Spain, of course, on the mainland and places like Rioja and other parts. But they actually produce some really, really delicious and unique wines here, partly owing to the rich volcanic soils that you'll find here. So that'll be another one of the excursions that we do. We're also going to visit the southern tip of the island where a volcano called San Antonio went off many years ago. This is not the newest volcano that obviously erupted just 3 years ago, but all of the islands are volcanic, and you'll see that both Tenerife and in La Palma. And so much of their culture, their cuisine somehow relates back to the volcanoes and the volcanic soils that you find here. Here we're going to explore into some of the cuisine that is unique to La Palma and each of the islands. Although Canarian cuisine can be classified into sort of one group at all as different from Spanish cuisine as a whole. And of course, you'll find classic Spanish dishes here like paella and so on, which don't originate from the Canary Islands. But what's exciting is to try some of the food that is unique to the Canary Islands, and of course the wine as well. So once again, on our volcanoes, vineyards, and coastal cuisine, we'll visit the South Coast and explore some of the again, some of the cuisine and some of the vineyards that are famous in La Palma. This actually is a very interesting shot, because when you look at this picture, you think it looks like the whole island is covered by a volcano. But in actual fact, this is the so-called Caldera de Taburiente. This is the newest volcano and that was created by the volcano that went off 3 years ago. In fact, this whole mountain that you see here did not exist before the volcano went off. So it's quite and when the local guides explain exactly what happened and the impact of it, and it's really, this is undoubtedly the most interesting thing here, because you get to talk to people whose lives were firsthand impacted by this volcano. And when I visited, the gentleman that took myself and some other people around, his home was literally is now under 10 meters of lava. And he tells you the story of life before, life after, and how people just had to move on. And yet it was a massive disruption for a lot of people. But again, what you'll see is this stark fresh lava landscape, which, as you see here, everything was wiped out. But at the same time, and this picture doesn't sort of really show it, there's trees that were half buried in volcanic ash, and yet now the top half of them is all covered in leaves and blooming, and it's really, really an amazing sight. So this is one that I'm sure everybody will and should participate in. It's a half-day tour. We'll hear all about the volcano, what happened, the before, the after, and how it still impacts their lives today. Of course, we can't visit without going into Santa Cruz itself, and we'll have a guided sightseeing tour to there, just again, by way of showing you where you are on the map. So our hotel, the town of Las Canjajos, is over here in the background, and about 5 kilometers away, you have the bustling port of Santa Cruz. This is where everything happens. The cruise ships dock. This is where ships come in to bring supplies to the island, as well as bring produce off the island. They still grow bananas here. You'll see lots of banana plantations. And in Santa Cruz, we're going to explore the colonial aspect of the town. It'll give you a chance to sort of give you your whereabouts, your orientation, so you can come and wander in and around on your own. We'll visit a cigar factory. They actually produce some incredible cigars here, which of course they will tell you are better than Cuban cigars. I suppose that's a matter of, I wouldn't call myself a cigar aficionado, but you'll find some very interesting things that you wouldn't expect in a place like the Canary Islands. We'll do a so-called sunset heritage soiree, where we'll visit, again, a museum where local artisans are still spinning silk. So once again, you think it's not something that you necessarily would associate with the Canary Islands. But then again, most people from Canada don't know a lot about the Canary Islands. And so I was surprised to find all of these different things that have produced, these traditions that evolved over the years. We'll have a chance to sample some wine as we watch as we will be on the west coast of the island in Tazacorte, and from here we'll be able to watch the sun go down, and again really enjoy some of the heritage of the island, accompanied by some wonderful beverages and so on. So that gives you a little bit of a flavor of what we're going to be up to on week 1 in La Palma. Let's take you now to Tenerife part 2. So again, after La Palma, we're going to embark on the ferry that's going to leave right out of Santa Cruz. It's going to take us over to Los Cristianos. It's about a 90-minute ferry ride. It's not generally super rough. I mean, you never know with the ocean swells, but what they told me when I was there is that most people find it quite comfortable. It's seldom that and these are giant ferries, right? They're transporting cars and lots of passengers and trucks and all the rest of it. So, they're making these crossings multiple times a day to connect all the islands and also obviously connect them with the mainland. So we're going to be staying right in the heart of Puerto La Cruz. Again, this is the town that is on the north coast of the island. What I really liked about this town is that it had it had an older feel to it, in contrast to the popular and sort of concrete jungles of the tourist resorts on the south coast of the island, where no matter which way you look, all you seem to see is buildings and concrete. Here, the streets are lined with palm trees. You have older style buildings, you have brand new buildings, and there's just lots to see and do. So this is going to be a more vibrant experience than what we'll had on La Palma, where we're staying on a sort of a quieter small town outside. Here we are in the heart of a pretty bustling city of Puerto La Cruz, and we're going to stay at the Sol Costa Atlantis, which is right adjacent to the seashore, looking out with amazing views. Obviously, we have standard rooms that have a city view, but then we have rooms available. And for our early bird bookers, we have the chance to get an upgrade to a sea view room where you can look out over the coast, which has some amazing scenery to the cliffs that you see in the background here. It's quite beautiful. Look, you can see the palm trees. They've got pools. They've got a rooftop spa that's available. It's at additional charge, but for those that want to participate into some spa activities, that's available as well. But as I say, the main thing is you're right on the promenade with access to the old town that is about less than a 10-minute walk away. And there's lots of restaurants, cafes, things around to do, which makes it a great spot. So here you get a sense of one of the rooms. The rooms either face out to the city or to the sea view as shown here. And then, of course, we also have available, in this case, the Costa Atlantis has they're so-called extra rooms, which, again, like in La Palma, have a little bit larger, off a little bit of extra living space. Nice when you're staying for a week. So you can sort of put your feet up and relax and enjoy the amenities of the hotel. In Tenerife, our local guide, who is going to be Dario, I met this chap when I was there, an amazing fellow with a strong connection to the island. He has his own farm and grows raises all kinds of animals, and he's really a wonderful chap. And has created some great experiences for us that'll give us a great insight into the tradition and cultures of the island. So once again, we're going to divide it up into excursions that take us to different parts of the island. First of all, up in the northeast, which is a very lush part of the island. We're going to start in La Laguna, which is the town which is a UNESCO World Heritage, this former capital. I didn't get a chance to visit La Laguna when I was there. My visit was just a little bit too short, but the narrow streets and all the colonial buildings. This is where you'll sort of think that you could be somewhere in mainland Spain. And again, so much of this trip, you look at the landscape and you look around and you kind of think it's not really what I expected the Canary Islands to be, particularly on Tenerife, which has its hustling, bustling towns, and life is like it would be on the mainland, and yet here you are on an island relatively remote from certainly from the rest of Europe, not to mention from any mainland, so to speak. Up here, we'll head up to the biosphere reserve called the Anaga Peninsula and the Anaga Country Park. Some wonderful views of the part of the island that is a little bit quieter, again, compared to the south part of the island. So that's going to be the so-called lush northeast. We're going to head into the El Escobonal Valley. So again, remember that all of the islands are volcanic. The most famous volcano here is Teide, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But we want to take you to see some things that explain a little bit about the historic origins of the island, specifically the Guanches. The Guanches were the original indigenous people that lived on the Canary Islands. And so we're going to have a great trip that takes us into a hike into one of the most incredible ravines on the island. And we're also going to get a chance to do a hands-on pottery workshop where we'll get to create a piece of pottery just as the Guanche did, way back centuries and centuries ago. So this is quite an amazing tour. Of course, food is always an important part of our trips. And so we're going to do a trip that's focused, an excursion that's focused on the gastronomic aspect of Tenerife. We're going to visit a couple of the farms. We're going to learn about gofio, which is a special flour that is the staple in many of the foods that they eat on the island. We're going to learn about mojo, which is this sauce that they serve with so many of the dishes there. Like it's like literally every time you sit down and you get some bread, they serve it with mojo sauce. Which is really quite delicious and unlike anything I've tasted before. We're going to try the Canarian black pork, which is a special breed that was introduced by the natives hundreds of years, well, no, actually a couple of thousand years ago. So here again, we'll get lots of, for our foodies, and I know we have lots of foodies in our membership, a great way to learn a little bit about what the food of the Canary Islands is all about. We're going to take a couple of shorter trips. As I say, the volcano Teide is less than an hour drive from Puerto de la Cruz. And we're going to head up there at sunrise. Why? Because to see the volcanic peak of Mount Teide early in the morning as the sun is going up, the colors of this very rugged and barren landscape. So again, what's interesting is down at the coastline, you've got beautiful beaches, rocky, rugged coastline. And then as you head up the valleys, you've got more fertile ground. You see farms, you see wine growing. And then as you get right up to the volcano, up above 2,000 meters above sea level, it's this barren volcanic landscape. So it's amazing in the course of an hour how you pass through these different geological sort of regions. And so one of the neat things here that they do in Tenerife and also La Palma, it's one of the most important stargazing astronomic observation points on the planet. And so we're going to go up here in the morning to do a sun gazing session, looking through a special telescope, a solar telescope, looking at the sun. And why they do this here is because the air is so clear. I visited an astronomic observatory there while I was there on my trip just last month. And I had actually never looked through a solar telescope before, but you can look straight at the sun and see the sunspots and see these solar flares. There's been a lot of talk about this recently with the northern lights that just happened not that long ago across all of the northern hemisphere. And you get to understand the origin of that and hear about how this is such an important activity in the Canary Islands, specifically on Tenerife. So this is really a neat activity to do. Of course, you can't visit an island without doing something by boat as well. So we'll have a chance to, for those that are interested in marine activities, I always like to get out on the sea and see what kind of marine life that you can see, because, there are pilot whales and sea turtles and dolphins, and of course, a whole myriad of marine life that lives in the waters around the Canary Islands. Here we're going to do more of an evening trip called Wine and Stars. So this, anytime you combine wine with anything, usually makes for a good trip. But we're going to visit the first certified organic winery on Tenerife to learn about the kind of how they produce the wines in a completely sustainable methodology. And as the evening progresses, we get into the stargazing. And while you already get amazing stars from Puerto de la Cruz by being outside of the city, you get to see these incredibly clear skies where the stars are just incredible. I mean, for many of us in Canada that live in more rural areas, we're used to having these amazing skies, but at the same time, in the Canary Islands, this is really what they're really famous for. And so what better way to spend an evening than sipping some wine and doing some stargazing. So that gives you a little bit of a taste of what we got in store for you. I'm super excited about this program because I think the Canary Islands are magical. I think that, like Madeira, it's a part of the world that you might not otherwise think of visiting. It makes a great combo with Madeira if you haven't been there before, but you could potentially combine it with some of our other programs as well. So I'll share with you some of the logistics, if you will, about this trip, although of course all of the info is in our detailed program itinerary. So once again, and I think some of our members will be delighted to hear that we decided to put this in January. We were looking into the timing for this. We thought we might do it later, but then again, when I talked to basically everybody I talked to on the Canary Islands saying, what's the weather like in January versus February? And they said, well, it's basically the same. You know, the temperatures in January typically range. I mean, the evenings can get cool. It might drop to, on a really cold day on the coast, maybe 12 degrees. And during the daytime, typically in the high teens, but could easily be in the low 20s and even warmer sometimes. So actually perfect travel weather, particularly for those who don't really like the heat of more tropical destinations. So once again, January 18th to February the 1st, the 2-week program here, starting at $49.90 Canadian. That's based on our standard rooms with a modest upcharge for a single room. All of the excursions that are detailed here, I just want to point out a couple of things. First of all, we will give you the flight or the ferry ticket between La Palma and Tenerife. So we may go by ferry, we may go by plane. It just depends a little bit on schedules and timing. That is not actually all sort of official yet. So that's something that we'll decide closer to the actual trip. But either way, we get you from one place to the next. 14 nights accommodation with breakfast every day. And again, in La Palma, we actually have half board at the hotel. So there'll be a buffet dinner in addition to the breakfast that's included. The activity credit for this program is $800 Canadian that you can apply to the excursions that we've mentioned and any other ones that we add on when the program actually comes to fruition. And then all the other stuff that gets included on our LiveAway program. So the only thing that you need to look after in addition, of course, airfare, insurance, yes, and something that's new for next year. We've always provided SIM cards, and we continue to provide SIM cards for everybody, physical SIM cards for those that have mobile phones that take physical SIM cards, but apparently there are new SIM cards that don't. So we're not able to do eSIM cards, but they are relatively inexpensive. But in fact, they're cheap if you compare them to mobile phone prices in Canada. So that is one of the only changes that we have here. And as I mentioned, anybody that signs up to this trip fairly soon, and we actually have a short window for the early booking bonus only because our hotel contracts in the Canary Islands are quite restrictive because this is a popular place to go. This is high season because God knows everybody else in Europe wants to visit the Canary Islands in wintertime as well. So if you book early, we can upgrade you to a sea view room in Tenerife, and that will be complimentary for those that sign up before the 10th of June. Okay, I've done a lot of talking. Hopefully I've got most of your questions answered, but at the same time, I'm sure there's a few more. So please type any questions that you have into the Q&A box or into the chat box. But of course, if you have some specific question, something you'd like to know, drop Paula a note, give her a call. We want to make sure you get all of your questions answered. Paula, leave it to you too.
Yeah, we'll go over some of these questions that have come in. Starting with the first one here is someone was asking about if there's a comfortable route to walk from the hotel into Santa Cruz. Sorry. It looks like quite a distance
It's quite a distance. Yeah, I wouldn't
to
call it
walk.
because the coastline, there is unfortunately, no walking path to my knowledge that goes along the coast. And the beach is the beach in front of the hotel. That area is a black sand beach, but then it becomes a rocky beach. So it's not like you could walk along. But there's certainly lots of walking in Santa Cruz itself. And there are other little towns and villages. The islands are quite well connected by public transport, is what I found. In fact, when I came to La Palma, I arrived at the port and I hopped on a bus and I went to the other side of the island, and I went and toured on a volcano, and then I hopped on another bus and came around. It was remarkably easy. So we'll obviously provide information about where you can go on your own, where you can walk. There are lots of other walks that are possible. And again, we can't provide an excursion to suit everybody's tastes, but there are lots of other options that are available on the island. And so if you're interested on this trip, I encourage, take a look. If you're somebody that's really into these hiking programs, you can hike right around the rim of one of the older volcanoes, for example, which is like a half day, 4 or 5 hour walk. Lots of different options available.
Awesome. Fantastic. Yeah, good to know, because members always, I know specifically like in other destinations, absolutely love using the public transit, such as like in Madeira.
Yeah, it's super easy there and clean and efficient. And I was really, really pleasantly surprised.
Fabulous. I have a member here asking with regards to doing a combination to Madeira, there's a couple night spacing gap. I think we've got 2 nights there.
Yeah.
Do you have a recommended stopover between the two?
No, so basically you either spend an extra night or two in Madeira at the end, sorry, in Tenerife at the end, or you arrive in Madeira a day or two early. We did that on purpose because there is one direct flight between Tenerife and Madeira, and there's one flight that goes via the next island of Gran Canaria. So but that's all there is. So we wanted to make sure that there was the ability to easily get from the Canary Islands to Madeira. And so depending on when you book, if you book early enough, you'll easily get on the direct flight on one of those days. Or in the worst case, as I say, you take a 15-minute flight to Gran Canaria and you connect over to Madeira. The cost is usually the same. So yeah, you need to either put on a post night in Tenerife or a pre-night in Madeira to link up those two programs, and we'll quote you on those.
Yep, and we can, yeah, definitely. I think they might be quoted in the additional information document. I can double check, but if not, I can give the rates to anyone interested. We usually recommend booking those once you've got your flight set, so that we know exactly what it is that you need and want. Perfect. I remember asking with regards to the group size for the Canary Islands. Can you let us know what that's going to be?
Yep. So with our LiveAway programs, the minimum group size that we'll go with, which I'm not really too worried about because I know we have a number of people who have been waiting for this program to come out, but our minimum group size will be around 12, and our maximum group size, as with any LiveAway program, will be 26. So it'll be somewhere in that range. What we found looking at our past LiveAways, like this year, for example, most of the groups were around 20 people. Some of them were a bit smaller. And I think the largest one that we had was actually to Bali at 26 people. But it's sort of in that range. And keep in mind that our excursions are always based on around 8 to 12 people, depending on the kind of excursion and so on and so forth. So even if we have 20 people on the overall LiveAway and everybody wants to go and do the volcano tour, well, we'll just run it 3 times. I mean, that's how it works, because the point is that when you're on excursion, we want you to have that intimate experience, and that's how our excursions have been and always will be designed.
Fabulous. Yeah, that's always a popular question that members are asking. And just to reconfirm, the maximum group size I see is actually 24 for this one, just
It's
so
actually
a heads up.
the hotel
Yeah.
size, yeah, because of
Yeah,
our
we have.
limitation. Yeah, exactly. So thank you for clarifying that.
Perfect. You touched on the weather's quite good in January, and can you confirm, I don't know if you'd gone over, but I have a member here asking what the weather is like. So
So
maybe
the
in case they
yeah,
missed that.
so once again, the weather typically is the daytime temperatures are typically between sort of 18 to 20 degrees, or actually more. They could get up to they could get up to 22, 23 degrees. That's what they typically are. In the evenings, obviously a bit cooler, but it would be highly unusual talking about on the coast. So either in La Palma or in Tenerife, the evening temperature would dip to single digits. That would be extremely unlikely. Up in the volcano. So, for example, when we do the sunset evening up at the volcano for the stargazing, that could be a little bit cooler because obviously, if you're at 2,000 meters of elevation, that it could be a bit cooler. So, we'll certainly advise about that in the pre-trip information. That for certain excursions in the evening, if we go up to elevation, yeah, it will definitely be cooler, but you're not going to see any snow. Let's put it that way.
I hope not. Well, maybe some would want to, but I
They've never seen snow in the Canary Islands. Again, except on the top of the volcano, which in the case of Tenerife is more than 3,000 meters above sea level. That's a different story. But
yeah. Always good to make sure that add that disclaimer just in case.
absolutely.
Okay, perfect. I don't have any other questions that have come in at the moment. So for any members that do have other questions that come in, feel free to reach out. Gordon's got the contact details listed there, and we can answer them for you. And we have additional information document which will give you a broad overview of all the questions you probably haven't come to mind yet, but will eventually at some stage. Members find it super helpful for those that aren't familiar with it already. And yeah, nice to see so many members online with us today. Thank you.
Yeah, lots of people. So thanks for joining us today. And we've got another new LiveAway destination in store this week. So please join us for Mallorca, which is Wednesday. Did I get that right?
Yes, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna pop the links in the chat box for
Yeah.
Mallorca on Wednesday.
We've got a webinar tomorrow and one on Wednesday, which is going to be Mallorca, which is our other newest temperate live-away destination in March of next year. For those of you that are interested in that island in the Mediterranean, again, I've also just come back and very excited to share with you that very, very special program that we've put together there. So lots of new options. I see a couple more questions that might have come in. Oh no, you've just dropped the information about Mallorca. And then, of course, Tuscany and San Marino, that's happening tomorrow.
Yeah, we do have another question actually that's come in. Will you send the info document to those on the webinar? Carol, send me an email. I do try and take note of everyone that's joined, but I might have missed some names, so it's always best to reach out to me to get that, just to make sure that I send it out to you.
Great. All right, let's wrap it up there. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to join us on our webinar today. And please do consider joining us. The Canary Islands are really a destination worthy of a visit. Look forward to hearing from you and seeing you on the trip. And we'll catch you all again on one of our next webinars. Take care. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.